meeting to order as we stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everyone. We are going to deviate a little bit from our regular type of meeting for two recommendations for hire. So I'm going to call Ms. Deb LaFleur up to introduce our first recommendation for hire.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Interview teams always say we only need one good candidate, and our team found an exceptional candidate. I'm enthusiastically recommending for your approval the appointment of Mr. Nick Niederquill for a teaching position. His 2024-2025 assignment will be as a mathematics teacher at Williamston Middle School. After reviewing the applicants' resumes and interviewing candidates, a team of middle school educators selected Mr. Niederquill as the best candidate to recommend to the school board. As you'll note in his resume, he's a highly qualified candidate who comes to us with outstanding experiences and references. Professionally, Mr. Niederquill has demonstrated his leadership skills as a mathematics interventionist, department chair, and mentor teacher at Waverly Middle School. He also taught mathematics for the past 22 years. One reference described Mr. Niederquill as mindful of both students' needs and how to adapt his teaching style to individual student learning styles. His communication skills and motivation of students while delivering and teaching math standards is engaging. His immediate supervisor stated, "Nick excels at relationship building with staff, families, and students. He has an infectious, positive energy that others crave to be around. He is masterful at creating a safe place for learning to take place. His educational decisions are data-driven and student-centered. I am confident that Mr. Niederquill is the best candidate for Williamston Middle School. He is already immersed in Williamston as a parent and community member and understands the quality of education provided at Williamston Community Schools. Mr. Niederquill's growth mindset, teaching experience, and leadership skills make him a great asset to WCS. I am honored to recommend Mr. Niederquill to the school board."
Is there any discussion? Thank you. I'd like to do this one at a time, so I will take a motion for hire for Mr. Niederquill.
Make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education hire Nicholas Niederquill to be a teacher beginning with the 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
First by Chris, second by Deb. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. Welcome. We'll get up in just a moment after the next recommendation for hire to shake everyone's hand. All right, and next is Dr. Dell to introduce our next recommendation for hire.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to recommend that Mr. Koji Vroom be hired as a math teacher at Williamston High School starting with the 2024-25 school year. Koji holds a Bachelor of Arts in Business from Kalamazoo College and a Master of Science in Sports Management from Eastern Michigan University. He served as a daily building substitute teacher at WHS for the past 2 years, including serving as a full semester daily science sub for the first semester this year. Also for the past 2 years, when not assigned to sub in the classroom, he's voluntarily gone into Mrs. Conklin's classroom to provide assistance in there on a regular daily basis. Outside of the classroom, Koji serves as our varsity basketball coach, but I do want to specifically state that the idea of hiring him because of that position was never mentioned once by the hiring committee, which was comprised of administrators, math teachers, and a special education teacher. Him being in the building every single day, being in the classroom for a full semester, working with students in an extracurricular capacity, has allowed us to observe him in an educational setting for 2 years. His references cannot speak highly enough of who Koji is as a person, his intelligence, his passion for education, how he treats and works with students, and how he interacts with his peers. As such, I enthusiastically recommend his candidacy as a math teacher at Williamston High School to the board for consideration.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All right, then I will entertain a motion to hire Mr. Room.
I make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education hire Mr. Koji Vroom to be a teacher beginning with the 2024-25 school year.
Second.
Chris? First by Deb, second by Chris. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, congratulations.
So everybody already knows you.
So many kids I don't know, but definitely in high school, mostly a lot of kids that I know already.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right, always exciting to welcome new staff, so congratulations to both Mr. Niederquill and Mr. Room. So the next part of the meeting is citizen comments. If there are any citizens that would like to address the board, you may step to the podium and you'll have 3 minutes. This specific citizen comments is only for agenda items, but you'll have another option at the end of the meeting to address the board on any matter. Do I have any citizens that would like to come forward? All right, seeing none. We'll move on to celebrations. Adam.
Good evening, board members. Celebrations for this evening, and as I mentioned at the last board meeting, this time of year, there's a lot going on, and I'm doing my best to hit some of the highlights, but inevitably there'll be some things that will slide through, and I'll try to catch them at a later meeting. But some of the main celebrations of many over the last couple weeks since we last met, starting off with baseball and softball teams both qualifying or being invited to their local area tournaments representing the best teams in the area. The Hall of Fame Classic, I believe, for the softball team, and the Diamond Classic for the baseball team, who I believe are playing as we meet. I don't know, do we have a score update, Mr. Paulson?
2-2.
All right, it's going to be a close one. So congratulations to both of those teams, and hopefully they go far in those events. Moving back to academics, Becky Derling has been named as a national finalist for the Presidential Awards for Mathematics and Science Teaching. So her candidacy will be reviewed at the national level, hopefully this summer, and it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, but it is a huge distinction to be named at that level and amongst the top in the business in terms of math and science instruction. So we wish her well as she moves on, and congratulations on that very significant achievement. Next, which has become, I think I've mentioned in the past, a bit of a dynasty in the state in terms of the quiz ball team, but the last several years they've moved on to participate in the national tournament in Chicago, and I think this year was their, actually I think this year was their best placement ever, finishing 13th in the country. So there's a story on the website, and you can look and see how they placed compared to schools all from the United States that competed in that event. And congratulations to Coach Ellis, who's with us this evening. And moving forward to this coming week, this kind of starts a couple weeks of celebration recognizing the class of 2024. Some highlights from this week: the senior project tomorrow, weather permitting, and their senior awards is tomorrow night. Their last day is Thursday, and then Friday will culminate their high school experience with their graduation rehearsal and school walkthrough tradition at the other buildings. Obviously, we know in a couple weeks will be commencement, but we had an outstanding senior class, and there'll be a lot more accolades and opportunities to talk about them here in the weeks to come. But as I was mentioning earlier today, that class, every year, they were rated as the top high school in the county, and so that is a really remarkable distinction for that group of seniors to have those accomplishments as a collective group. So like I mentioned, there'll be lots more celebrations to come here over the next couple meetings, but those are some of the highlights from the past 2 weeks, pending your questions.
Any questions for Adam? All right, we will move on to educational updates. We'll start with Mrs. LaFleur for the middle school.
It's always a fun time. We get to talk about all the hard work throughout the year. So the areas that we'll highlight tonight include data to inform instruction, and really looking at the work that we did around monitoring students' individualized growth. So we looked at their NWEA data as well as classroom assessments. And then we used the NWEA data to guide instruction and the intervention for students throughout the year. And focusing specifically on content area literacy, we expanded that work with Ingham ISD this year, and then focused on our social emotional learning at the middle school. As it relates to literacy, we increased the technical and informational reading across content areas and worked with the grade level teams and department teams. And as I mentioned, we really worked with the ISD this year. That work was to align the rigor and the expectations across all grade levels. Specifically, teacher teams revised questions that required higher order thinking and the needs for students to get back into the text to not only demonstrate their thinking, but to also show the learning that's taking place. As a building, we continue to monitor students, NWEA, individualized growth, and targeting interventions at that Tier 1 level, as well as focusing on interventions for our Tier 2 and our Tier 3 learners. The collaboration with our Williamston Middle School departments and grade levels was really a significant piece of our work. So not only were we talking about the interventions and literacy skills in the department areas, but we were also crossing over with grade levels so that we could make sure that that was aligned across our grade levels and across our building. And then the work with the ISD, we invited Jessica Martel. She's the literacy coach at the ISD to work with us, to work specifically around literacy intervention. But then we also worked with our NWEA guru, Kelly Trout. So she was able to help us better understand the data that was being presented to us and how we could dig down into that data to look for specific interventions for all of our students. For social emotional learning, this summer, our leadership team met this past summer, and we read a lot of books. So we read a lot of social emotional learning books, and the focus for that learning was to really find a book that we thought would be the right fit for our staff. And we fell a little short. So in our summer reading, we were kind of like, nothing has really landed for us. And then we met Chase Milkey in August, and Chase Milkey was the person who presented to us in August for our August PD, and we thought, well, let's give Chase a try. So we all read The Burnout Cure, Learning to Love Teaching Again by Chase Milkey, and this is what we landed on. We thought this is going to be a really positive book for us, because if we as educators cannot have a positive mindset, how can we help students to remain socially, emotionally healthy? So we read the book, we decided this was the book for us, and then we devised a plan on how we were going to implement that professional learning community. So we met once a month as a staff. We expanded that PD beyond teachers. So we invited teachers, we invited our building subs, we invited our parapros, our ancillary staff and administrators. So we had assigned readings, we came together once a month, we talked about our golden lines and what we were finding and really collaborated, and that was really powerful for us as a staff. I think also that the other educators in our building beyond our teachers appreciated being a part of that conversation. We know that we all work with students and we impact them in our own individual roles and ways. We expanded our mindfulness AOT sessions with Heather Lewis. So Heather Lewis intentionally came into the middle school and she met with Pete Cool's classes once a week, and she engaged in mindfulness activities. They'd often see them walking out and kind of having a sensory activity outside during their AOT sessions. She also taught them lots of strategies on how to manage through stress and how to regulate feelings. The students and staff engaged in surveys. So we sent out SEL surveys. Each time we had an SEL AOT session, the students would do a check-in. So a wellness check-in, which was monitored by our ancillary staff. So our counselor, our social worker, our school psych would look at those results, and then they would intentionally intervene as needed. We also asked for student or staff survey responses. So we were really curious about the impact that the lessons were having and whether the lessons were written in a way to support our educators so that they could implement those SEL activities. So we made constant adjustments along the way through the survey results. Zello is a program that we've used for our 7th grade students over the last few years. It really is that educational development plan. And this year we expanded Zello to be used for grades 6 through 8. So 6th graders were introduced into goal setting and interest, and they did activities along the way. The 7th graders completed their EDPs, and then the 8th graders revisited the educational development plans they had established as 7th graders, updated it, because we know middle schoolers are constantly changing their minds, changing their ideas, changing their interests. So they updated that and engaged in the Zello lessons, and we received some feedback from them along the way. We expanded our elective course offerings. So it's been historical that our 6th graders were kind of given elective classes in a random way, and we decided that we would provide the opportunity for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to select their elective class offerings. So they ranked them in first choice to last choice, and then we've really used that information to build their schedules this year. And we're doing our best to give them the offerings that they prefer.
I'll note that that is in alignment with your updated board goal 1, which focuses on the individualized component. So it was a nice change alignment at the middle school level with that updated goal.
Mm-hmm. And then we also did a dot activity, and the purpose of the dot activity is to intentionally identify the students in our building that we have a positive, regular intervention and relationship with. So we did this in our grade level teams. So the grade level teams, we had our whole student body in a spreadsheet, and then the teachers would go through and they would identify the students that they knew they had a positive relationship established with. We then expanded that out to our ancillary staff, our custodian, the people working in the office, the parapros. And so what we were able to do is we were able to identify kind of the missing students, the students we hadn't connected with yet. And then we were really intentional about building a system so that we could build those positive relationships with students. So I'm happy to report that we have all of our 6th through 8th grade students who have at least one adult, sometimes more than one adult, that they can identify as a person that knows them well, knows them broader than them as students, right? Knows about their life, and they have a positive interaction. So that's the work that we've been doing around SEL this year. So the celebrations, we really did increase the interventions. We were able to offer the morning interventions for students, focusing on math and literacy. We were able to expand our SEL interventions so that we could target the growth and well-being of all of our students. We increased those opportunities for students to learn beyond the classroom. A couple of our intervention classes, they were able to go over to our senior center in Williamston, and they conducted interviews with our seniors, engaged in conversations with them, applied writing to those, to the interviews. And so that was a really great experience for them and for the seniors in our community. And then we also had our advanced social studies, which I know you approved our advanced social studies a few years back. So they were able to travel to Wayne State University this year, and they participated in the We the Students Showcase that was financially supported by Williamston Schools Foundation. So we were able to kind of get them out. They had a great experience, and they were able to really, I think it is kind of like the pathway to some of those opportunities they'll have in high school too. And really just expanding that social emotional support for staff is another celebration for us. We always like to do the fun things, right? Staff, they love food, they love to gather, they love to talk. But we also had activities this year that were specific to the staff, but then we also had those activities for students, whether they were taking place at lunch, whether they were happening, during our SEL times, and also just providing the ongoing intentional opportunities for them. So our thoughtful AOT sessions and activities really did make a difference for all of our adults and students this year, and we are proud to celebrate that. So as we look toward next year, our next steps, next steps a lot of times are the ongoing work of right now. So we will continue to provide differentiated instruction for students in all content areas, so that work from this year will continue on with more depth next year. We'll be looking at 6th through 8th grade teachers and delivering that explicit instruction and promoting higher order thinking and those rigorous writing responses. That work is kind of, as we look at school improvement, it's the work of many years, and we're just looking for the growth and those opportunities over time. Our academic overtime is going to be intentional, where we're really structuring the purpose. We have pods of AOT sessions that are structured, but we really are going to explicitly structure those across our building, where individualized support is being provided for students. Examples of that will include things like reteaching, intentional groups of reteaching, pre-teaching for students, and then also providing those opportunities for ongoing review. So students, it'll be really important for students to make sure they sign up ahead of time, they have a focus for their learning, and the teachers will have a focus for that instruction that they provide. So again, we have that happening in a variety of pods in our building, but we're going to consistently push out that practice next year. And then providing resources to the staff and professional development for our SEL. Really kind of broadening that beyond our district. We've done a lot of work within our district, within our building, but really is networking into the Be Nice program, networking into trails, and the professional networking that happens. We have the beauty of our counselor, Sophia McCool, who's still connected at the university level, so there's a lot of networking that happening there, which is allowing us to tap into their expertise too. So those are our next steps for our building at Williamston Middle School, but I'm wondering, do you have any questions for me?
Any questions?
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's good work.
Lots going on and
Mhm.
lots of intentional planning for next year.
Yep.
Okay, hearing no other questions, we can move on to the handbook. And thank you for, we say this every time, but it's so true. The way that it's organized and laid out is so helpful to us.
Well, I'm going to give you credit for this, Dr. Delp. I borrowed his format of keeping what's still intact and then embedding the new, so you could see a little bit more of the section. So
Very
before it was
helpful.
just the new stuff.
Very helpful.
So
Thank you.
remind me again, I know you've had the opportunity to go over the memo of the changes. Do you want me to go specifically through the handbook with you, or to see if you have questions? What would be the format that works best for you?
Let's start with, do we have any questions about any of this to start?
I don't have any question, but I do have a question. I don't know how we manage it. It's the AI piece.
Okay.
How do we determine if something or the teacher believes it was created using AI versus the student's original work?
Yeah, so these are big discussions we've been having. So our district, we started to learn more about AI. We know that it's something that is really happening, and students are accessing it, adults are accessing it, so we felt like we needed to put something in the handbook just to kind of define AI. So that was the first piece. So on page 17, you'll notice that we just defined it. What is it? And so that was our first starting point. The other thing that I know it's been a point of discussion, which is on page 20 of the handbook, was the revision around plagiarism. So we know that there are wonderings about plagiarism and how AI will impact that. So the way that it's written in the revised handbook is that AI needs to be cited. So if you're using AI as a resource, it needs to be cited. I know one of the things that we're looking at to kind of address your question is, so what does that look like in a classroom? So separate from the handbook, we'll be looking at rubrics, so to speak, that will kind of identify what's okay to use in AI for a classroom and what isn't. But that is work that we haven't gotten there yet.
Right.
Yeah. But the first groundwork was to just kind of like identify what is AI, define it, and then also recognize when plagiarism might happen when AI is used.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of the items you'll see with AI really focus around the syllabus and how the teacher structures an assignment around AI and like sets the level of expectation for how much of AI you can use. So nothing at all, if it's like, for example, an original writing piece, or can you use a lot of AI to help generate, I don't know if you're looking at a more complicated, formula, or you're doing an experiment or something like that, where AI can be of an assistance to that project. So a lot of it will come down to the teacher kind of plotting that out strategically in terms of how can AI impact a particular unit or topic of study. But to start with, you'll see in the secondary handbooks kind of this larger framework that kind of outlines what it is and how it fits into the broader context. We all know AI is happening, whether we like it or not. It's happening, and it's pushing things forward rapidly. Education, unfortunately, tends to be a profession that's resistant to change. But we have, at least in Williamston, started to lean into that this year. So we've brought in experts to work with our staff. We've trained up our technology coaches, and our administrators have had some additional training as well. So we're trying to lean into it so we're not caught unprepared as that continues to influence the future of education, like so many other occupations throughout the world. So it's a work in progress, but I think it's something you're going to continue to see get added and refined in the years to come.
Okay. And then I have one other question regarding the cell phone policy, where the exceptions for being able to have a phone, one of them is to help with anxiety. Is that, if that is used, would that require an IEP or 504 to be able to use it for that specific?
Yeah,
Okay.
it would be within a 504 or an IEP.
All right, thank you.
Yep. So to move on to the cell phone on page 21 and 22, that was really an alignment of the board and the expectation with cell phones. And then Dr. Delp and I worked to align kind of the progressive discipline as cell phone violations may occur. So you'll notice when he has the opportunity to talk about his handbook revision, you'll notice that our progressive discipline is aligned with first, second, and third offense.
And then the parental involvement is the new policy that was added.
So that's coming. We kind of had a chicken and egg situation where there's a revised policy that's coming to the policy committee next week after, whatever the next meeting for that is. But we also need it to be included in the handbook, so you'll kind of see that twice. But it's an update that needed to be made for that policy.
And we'll have that meeting before the next board meeting where we would then approve.
Yeah, you'll see them both. You'll approve them both at the same time, I believe.
Yeah, so that was added onto page 36, 37 in the middle school handbook, which is the parental involvement piece that you're referring to. And we didn't have that in there, so we needed to add that complete piece in there. Same with posting of materials on school property on page 37. That was not in the middle school handbook, so we added that to reflect the board policy.
That'll also be a policy that's coming to the policy committee in a week or so.
And then the other change that was made was around extracurricular activities. So when reviewing the extracurricular activities, it was noted that we had kind of here's what 6th graders can do related to athletics, but we didn't have the sports that 7th and 8th graders are able to participate in. So we added that language for athletics. And then any of the guidelines around athletics and the code of conduct policies will be found in the athletic handbook. So that is separate, although connected to this work here. And then also, we recognize that we didn't have the language around clubs, so extracurricular activities at the middle school also involve clubs. And so we wanted to include that and needed to include that in the handbook. So that is the addition there around clubs. Any questions around any of the changes of the handbook?
I'm just curious about clubs. If a club's not listed, does that mean it couldn't happen in the future? Like, is it?
So these are our current sanctioned clubs, but there is, one of the things that I anticipate that we'll need to add is the language around non-sanctioned clubs and the opportunity for that, because that is available at the middle school level too.
Okay. Yeah, I wondered because there was some kind, I don't remember the name of it, but I know there was an LGBTQ club in the past.
Mm-hmm, yep.
So that would be an unsanctioned?
Yep,
Okay.
So there's kind of like three layers, right? So you have board sponsored. Those would be included in Appendix A of the contract with the Education Association. And what that means is the board's paying the coach, they're paying for uniforms, transportation, all the other things that make up that event. So that could be like student government or the volleyball team. I mean, those are the kind of things you'll generally see there. Then you have board approved clubs, but they're not sponsored. So in other words, the board has approved that club to use the district logo and name. So examples would be the trap shooting club that you approved last summer, all right? And then you have other clubs that the school allows to use the facilities, to post things on the community information board, but they're not official district clubs. So the GSA, for example, at the middle school would be an example of that. So there's advertisements put up, students can attend if they're, if they want, but it's not something that we're organizing, paying for. It's just something they can do and use the space for. So you kind of have these different layers, and I believe, and I'll have to verify, but I think I'm working on a policy revision on that as well in terms of how those kind of come into existence and the application process. I mean, we have a pretty good system, but I think I'm tweaking that. I just can't remember it's in this next batch of policies or the one after. So that might be something coming to the board sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Any handbook questions? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is Dr. Delp for the high school update and student handbook.
Good evening again. Okay, this is our 2023-24 educational update. This is not going to be as broad and all-encompassing as it's been in the past. There were some specific areas that I wanted to dial in on and get a little bit of a deeper dive with the data and information. So not quite as broad as maybe some previous years, but some topics that I definitely wanted to draw your attention to. So we're going to be talking about our common grading policy work that's been ongoing the last couple of years, our SEL work and where we're going next year, individualized and customizable learning opportunities, which really came to our attention this current school year and is just going to continue to grow into next year. Some AP survey feedback that was requested by the board, and then also just an overview of where our individual core departments are going with their PD work next year. So to start, as you know, for the last few years, we've been working on developing and adopting common grading policy at the high school. We've been doing this by individual component. This year, the first component we tackled was retakes. We spent the fall and the beginning of the winter developing this policy. It went to the entire staff at our staff meeting on December 4th, and the staff majority, 75%, voted to implement this policy starting with the 24-25 school year. I'm not going to read the entire policy to you, but I put that in there just in case you were curious. But some highlights: students are going to be able to retake their summative assessments. There's no grade cap, so if I earned a 90%, I can't retake. That's not the case. Anyone who wants to retake is going to have that opportunity up to the end of the semester. Teachers can either administer those retakes themselves, or we also have homework lab and academic Saturday school where teachers can turn those assessments in and students can come in and take them then if it's prearranged. So the better grade for the retake will go into Power School. The original grade will be documented so that parents and students can see that, but the better grade will go in without penalty and be averaged into the summative overall grade. This opportunity for retakes, like I said, goes until the end of the semester. If there is a summative assessment that has not been taken originally or retaken, at that point the grade up till then, including a possible 0, would stand. Final exams also cannot be retaken, just given the timeline of the end of the semester and the need to get grades finalized. Are there any questions on the retake policy?
Maybe a little clarification.
Yeah.
Sure.
So if I take second semester, if I take a test in March, I can take the same test, retake it in May. Because here it says retake must be taken within 10 days.
Yep. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm
Yeah,
moving
I was
ahead
like,
to our
wow,
next
that's very
policy. No,
generous.
thank you for the correction. Yeah, so the retake can be taken within 10 school days of whenever it's returned to you or graded. So that is for the retake. What you'll see next is for zeros. That's where the end of the semester is going to come in. So I apologize for the miscommunication. Yes, so retakes are within 10 days, but anyone can retake regardless of original grade earned. Thank you for catching that.
So they can retake any test, just not the final test?
Correct. A summative assessment. So whether that's a test, it might exist in some sort of different form, a presentation. If they're not happy with their end of the unit summative
Right.
score, they have an opportunity to retake to improve their grade, but also hopefully demonstrate, their additional learned knowledge of that content. Okay. The next one, as I just mentioned, was zeros. This is what we worked on for the majority of the second half of the winter and in the spring. There are 2 parts to the zero policy. The first is practice work and formative assessment. And the second is the summative assessment, so the end of the unit final assessment, whatever that looks like. So teachers can put zeros into Power School. If the assignment has not been turned in within 10 days, we have a 10-day grading policy with a few exceptions for very large projects and long papers. Things will also be flagged as missing so that students and parents know that the 0 was not a 0 earned because the student did poorly, right? There's some confusion there. What's the 0 really a 0 for? But it's a 0 for missing. A student can turn in that practice or formative assessment up until the summative assessment is taken. So they have the entire unit to turn in any missing work with no penalty. Again, our goal here is for students to learn the material, right? And be given opportunity to demonstrate their understanding of the material. So we talked when we implemented our non-achievement rubric, right? Accountability, timeliness, those are also important skills that we want to teach our students, and how they're doing there is captured on the non-achievement rubric. When it comes to their academic learning, if students can turn the work in and demonstrate that they have learned the material, we want that to be reflected in their grade. Because, as I'm going to talk about in a little bit, them earning credit for classes is based on them demonstrating mastery of standards. And if they can demonstrate that they have a mastery of a standard, maybe it isn't necessarily the original timeline, but if that student can demonstrate 3 or 5 days later that they've learned that material, should we really penalize them for just taking a little longer to learn it? When again, we can catch maybe the punctuality concerns, the accountability concerns on the non-achievement rubric separately. With the summative assessment, zeros can also be added into PowerSchool if the student has not taken them within the 10-day grading window. The summative assessment that's missing, thank you again for correcting me, can be taken up until the end of the semester. So if for whatever reason the student did not take the assessment, he or she has an opportunity to make up that assessment until the end of the semester. At the end of the semester, zeros would become final. Where this conversation originally started was we just needed some guidance with when are zeros going in. We had zeros going in from the day something is collected, and we had zeros going in 3 months later. And students' grades were all over the place. Students and parents didn't know where their grades stood going into the end of the semester. There were a lot of questions when it came to athletic eligibility because teachers were grading, putting zeros in at different times. So that's what kicked us off, is we just need to be consistent throughout the building. But then as we dove into the work, we really identified that there are two types of work, right, that students are turning in, that practice/formative work and the summative work. So that's the reason for the two different policies as far as when they can be turned in, either by the end of the unit or end of the semester.
So I have a question.
Yes.
And I don't want to be the, I kind of was thinking when we started this whole grading thing, it was more of reducing the amount of retakes because students would like take a test and then be like, I'm just going to continue to take it. I know what's on it. I can now answer some of them more correctly, right? If you get a 90 and then you retake the exact same test, now I'm getting 100. Now it's like you can take that up until 10 days, but also any homework. So like, I could just choose not to do any homework, grab my friend's homework that did it all, copy all their homework and turn it in before my final and have no penalty. How is that proving you learned something if you're just giving, they're just, I mean, I feel like we went in the opposite direction of where I thought we were going as far as the grading.
I hear your concern. So a couple points. What the research shows, and our teachers, like our math department, for example, already allows retakes. The anecdotal data that our teachers have provided, that is a concern almost everybody on the staff had, as far as, are all of these students just going to take all of these retakes? And that really isn't the case. So it's a fear, but that fear doesn't really come to fruition in the classroom based on what the research is telling us and what our own staff is saying they've seen in their classes. And that even includes at the MSA level, where those are some of our highest achieving students, very concerned about their grades. So in Mr. Rasmus's class, for example, he allows retakes. There might only be 4 or 5 students out of 25 who choose to take that retake.
Well, I could see that, but his body of work, their work seems to be much more diligent, right? And much, there's a lot more to do maybe in one of his assessments versus an assessment that you might have just in a normal English class or science class, where some of those assessments can be smaller, less time to do the actual work versus, some type of an assignment that might take somebody hours to do the work, and now they've got an assignment that takes them 20 minutes, and they're like, I'm just gonna collect all my assignments at the end and do them all at one time, right? It was kind of, the whole point of this was kids not knowing where they were at, because either one class didn't allow a retake, one class did, one teacher would give it but never put it in the book, until I feel like now it's just kind of opened up. I mean, I guess we'll just kind of see. I just feel like there's a lot of room in here, unless you're like on a specific sports team that requires you to have a grade at a certain level during the week. So if you have zeros going in your grade, that you won't be able to play. So, those type of students, but if you're not, I just have concerns about, and I don't know what data was looking at, if there's other schools that have this exact same policy, so you kind of went through and saw where that data was. I mean, we haven't had, I don't think in a policy this seems very lenient to me. But
This would be very, very closely aligned with standards-based grading. So when we look at the research by O'Connor, by Gutsky, This is right in line with their national research, and that was one of the requirements when we started our grading work, is we wanted our individual components to be research backed. So that, when we started looking at the research that had been done at the national level, is what moved us to start initially looking at this. But then again, the math department allows retakes, the science department allows test corrections, which they were counting as retakes. Some of our social studies teachers were doing the same thing. So what it turned out is more than half of our staff was already following something very, very similar to this.
And I do agree with that. I mean, being that I had 2 kids, but I think a lot of what they were saying the retake was maybe the information in the classroom setting was different than the information on the test, right? So then they would take a test and say, well, wait a minute, I don't remember seeing 50% of this in my classroom setting, so now I just failed my test and I've got to go back through. And so it was more like, that was the one thing that we were asking to be addressed. And then it was, if you're going to allow retakes, do you give the exact same test back to them, or do you give something to see if their knowledge in the subject has, so that they're not just taking a test to get a 50% and then come back 2 days later and take the exact same test knowing exactly what's on it. They go home and study exactly what they need instead of the broad scope of work.
Yep.
And is that causing just more work for the teachers on that kind of level, and students to just,
For this school year, for some departments it did. Again, I keep mentioning the math department because they've been doing it for years. From August, we told the departments that moving into retakes, you have this school year to design a retake, right? So instead of having to do it all this summer, as you come to each summative assessment in each unit, design your retake at that point. It was also interesting, speaking of the AI policy, when we had some AI PD work in February with the staff, one of their concerns, staff concerns, was the time it takes to redo an assessment, right? You can put the first assessment right into AI and it will generate a like assessment. And they used it on a math test. They put in 10 problems and they said regenerate a retake, and it was spot on. And so reformulating questions that might be asked in a social studies test, that is a tool that, as we use our PD time to use AI, how do we work smarter, not harder, looking at some of these resources. So this retake piece and this AI tool seem to be kind of coming together at the same time. One of your other quick concerns, and it was for us as well, was if students can just turn all of this work in, right, and copy their friends and turn it in for full credit. That is a concern right now. The first piece we're going to be tackling in the fall is the weights of our assessments versus homework, because right now we haven't gotten there yet. So homework might be worth 40% in your class, but 15% in my class. Mm-hmm. So just in preliminary conversation, my best guess is the homework grade is going to be weighted low enough that even if kids want to just copy and turn that stuff in, they're not going to be able to just either copy and cheat or be good at playing school and earn those grades without demonstrating mastery of those standards. Mm-hmm. So that's the direction we're headed. So that concern was absolutely raised. It still is a little bit because the weights are all over, but it's what we're going to tackle first when we get to the fall. What do our summative assessments look like? Are they aligned to the standards? And how are we weighting the practice/formative work versus the summative?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I also think there's a lot of discretion, and this will be learned over time, right? I think we talked about it at the board workshop, right? There were some questions about the retakes and the amount of time that's being spent on working through the retake policy. This will take time to refine, both at the school level and for the individual teacher. Over time, though, they'll get better at it, especially if it wasn't something they were already doing. But an effective strategy is, trying to ensure the student has demonstrated that there's been additional learning that's taken place since the original assessment, right? So it's not just, hey, you just show up 3 days later and I'll take the test again. Well, what have you done in the last 72 hours to show me that the outcome's going to be any different? And there's a lot of ways that could be done, doing additional practice, meeting with the teacher, et cetera. I mean, there's a lot of options, but the onus still has to be put back on the student that this is on you, right? I'll support you, but in order to have another opportunity at this, you have to show that you've done some additional work. And I do think Dr. Delp's right in that this will align nicely with the next step in the process. And, again, I like to use the basketball analogy, so practice versus summative, the formative, or practice versus the game, summative versus formative. So, if you're shooting free throws and you're not very good at it, but you keep practicing, and when you get into the game, you hit all your free throws, all the shots you missed in practice don't count against you. It's only how you did in the game. Likewise, if you just tell your coach, hey, I've been practicing free throws, but you haven't really been doing it, guess what you're going to do in the game? So, and then in order to have another chance at playing the game, you really now have to show the coach, you practiced your free throws. Otherwise, I'm not going to put you back in the game because I don't expect a different result to just magically appear. So I think all these things will come together as all the steps of creating the process, the standardized grading practices are put in place, and then they'll be refined over time, which is always the case with these kind of changes.
Just another quick, as far as Power School with the zeros for the missing work, will that populate into the total grade for the week? So when we talk about athletes or band or people, will they be able to come back and say, well, technically, I have no penalty, I have until the end of the semester to do this, so I'm not late, I want to play tonight.
It's like real time
So
factoring in.
it's like, well, that's a caveat you can use, but not for you if you want to play basketball, kind of thing.
The eligibility policy is still a 1 week window because some teachers might put all of a week's worth of work in on Sunday night, right? And kids haven't had an opportunity to turn something in. And instead of them being ineligible at 8 a.m. Monday morning, they have like that grace window.
Right.
So there are kids that pop into, the high 50 percentile, but it's just because either the teacher hasn't graded it, or they turned it in a hair late, or it was just weird timing when the teachers put everything in Power School. So there is grace there for those situations, but once you're past that week-long grace window, it is your grade in real time. And that actually was when we talked about, are we putting zeros in for these summative assessments? If they can retake them till the end of the semester, why put them in? And it was twofold. One, because if kids haven't done summative assessments, they probably shouldn't be eligible to take or to participate in athletics, right? Because technically they haven't demonstrated mastery up to that point in the class. The second issue was if we wait until the end of the semester, the student can have a B, but then I put a couple zeros in, and if my summatives are weighted heavy enough, all of a sudden I'm failing the class. So it goes back to, do students know what their grades are in real time or weekly throughout the semester, so that nobody's caught off guard when things are going in 3 months late. Because the teacher might be able to make the case, well, that wasn't in there. You had to know that was going to be worth a lot of points. You had to know if that's a zero. This just takes all that subjectivity out of it.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Conversely, zeros, contrary to conventional wisdom, like crush students' motivation. I think sometimes there's the misconception that, if they have a lot of zeros, they're just going to work harder and try to get that average up. And for starters, one, it's mathematically impossible in many cases. I mean, we had a student many years ago who, and I don't know what was going on, maybe they just weren't doing what they were supposed to do, and that's on the student, but who they could have a mental health crisis or something going on at home. I don't know what it was. But they had some zeros from earlier in the semester, second semester, and for spring sports, no matter what that student did, there was no mathematical way they could ever get their grade high enough to be able to compete. So they were ineligible for the year because mathematically, no matter what they did, they couldn't improve their grade enough to get it over into the eligibility line. So this does provide some grace, but it's also going to provide, it's going to be a challenge for kids though still when you get behind, because the new material is still coming. So you have to continue to learn that, and you're going to have to double your efforts to go back and try to relearn. So you're really going to have to put some effort into this as a student, and that's the way it should be. The heavy lifting should be done by the student, but we also have to give them, especially with zeros, an opportunity to be successful at some point and not just destroy anything else they want to do because of just the mathematical reality of what zeros do to a student's grade.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the at-risk. I mean,
Yeah.
the research says the at-risk students who see those zeros, they're so beaten down and they don't believe in themselves that it's just not a motivator for them at all. So having a window, we're trying to find that balance between accountability, right, and eligibility and real-time grades within 10 days, but also giving kids that grace window, right? So, because really it too, like I said, was luck of the draw. I mean, you have a teacher who put something in on that day and you're ineligible, and the next kid who's on the same team, his or her teacher puts it in a month later, they've been eligible for a month. So it was all subject to teacher timing, right? So that doesn't seem quite right either. So, and like Dr. Spina said, there is a lot of crossover with these individual grading components, and until they're all in place. So for example, last year we put no extra credit in place. Well, the question was, if there's no extra credit, how do we give students the opportunity to demonstrate, right, or make up? Well, that's where the retake comes into play, right? You can't just do extra credit, but you have an opportunity to do a retake to earn a better grade. But we needed another year to develop that retake. So the policies or components are closely aligned, and it will take a couple more years until the thing is completely done. So there are going to be, what about this, what about that, until the work is done.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on the zeros? Okay, shifting gears to our SEL work. Our SEL this year really modeled what we did last year, where we had AOT SEL Tuesdays every other week after fifth hour for half an hour. Heather Lewis and Kate Wilcox did a great job of recording trails videos for our students to watch. So basically our routine was every other Tuesday, kids would stay in their fifth hour. We would watch the SEL trails video. Students always have an opportunity to complete an individual Google form if they're in crisis or need some sort of adult support, and that goes right to our mental health team. And there was some variation, again, depending on teacher, how much dialogue was taking place or not. So having come to the end of our second year and wanting to assess, right, is this working for students and staff? A survey was developed. It was taken by 274 students, so almost 50% of our population and 26 teachers, which is about 90% of our staff. And in several meetings looking at that data, we have overhauled the structure of what our SEL work is going to look like next year. So this isn't so much about this current year, because it was a model of last year, it's where we're going next year. And really, when you look at an MTSS model, looking at the tier 1, the tier 2, and the tier 3, being cognizant of making sure we're offering tier 1 opportunities for basically all, or at least the overwhelming majority of our students. Where we felt we could do this most impactfully was by incorporating the Trails curriculum, which has already been board approved, into health class, because the overwhelming majority of our students take health, and it seems to fit nicely into there, so that all students, many their sophomore or freshman or sophomore year, are exposed to this right away, so that they come into high school being exposed to this material. We're still going to continue our AOT SEL time, but that will look differently. We will have some priority building wide videos, maybe once a quarter. This is a really important topic. Everybody needs to watch it. We're going to have a choose your own adventure days, which our students absolutely love. This is everything from do a little bit of trails work, but also go for a walk or play a game in the gym. It basically gives kids 30 minutes, and we run it once a month, where they get to decide what they want to do to support their own mental health. One of the things we're adding is a study hall, because some of the data and the feedback was some of the students feel that they don't need SEL time, and by not being able to study, it was harming their own mental health because they were getting anxious about their schoolwork. So during Choose Your Own Adventure, if you want to study, if you want to do homework, that is an opportunity for you. So we really are trying to provide individual opportunities and choice instead of one size fits all. We all go to 5th hour, we all watch the video. Having a variety of opportunities, including speakers that hit the entire school population, but with choice. Tier 2, this is going to take a deeper dive. This is more small group work. In the media center during SEL time, establishing our calm room, which we're developing right now to implement in the fall, and working with students to develop an SEL steering committee. And then finally, the tier 3, the individualized one-on-one work, which is in place already, but will continue, is the mental health support team, the counselors, the social worker, the mental wellness specialist will meet and work with students one-on-one as needed, as identified. So we're hopeful that based on the data and what the feedback was and where the program was struggling with the design and implementation, this is some of what people were asking for. We're hoping that this restructured SEL time has a greater impact for us in the building, both for students and staff. Questions about our redesigned SEL time for next year?
Another nice example of the board's focus on individualized programming.
Okay. This takes me to one of our last big points, is that individual and customizable learning opportunities. That really, it's been happening for a few years, but we especially saw it this year with the concurrent enrollment Ferris class that was taught by the 2 classes taught by Mr. Herrick. When you look at our projections for next year, and this is what students are currently enrolled in for 24-25, and they'll be getting their schedules next Wednesday, 8th through 11th graders. Right now we have 97 students signed up for dual and concurrent enrollment, so 97 students taking college classes. We're continuing our Ferris Concurrent Enrollment Partnership. We have 90 students going to the Wilson Talent Center. That is by far, by at least a third, maybe 40%, the largest group that we've ever had. Mrs. Eric, our counselor, does a phenomenal job. In a couple years, she started taking the entire sophomore class out there, so everybody in the class could see their options and opportunities. And to get 90 students in is really unheard of. But you know, listening to some of the staff at Wilson, they saw the enthusiasm our students had, and they rewarded them for that enthusiasm. And we have 45 students currently signed up to take Michigan virtual courses. So when you look at college classes, the Wilson Talent Center, and Michigan virtual high school courses, that's over 200 kids. That's over a third of our student population taking at least one course a day outside of the normal WHS offered 58-minute class, you know, high school seat in-person learning course. So providing opportunities to students continues to grow. It does become challenging within the building. You know, when it comes to building a master schedule and that sort of thing, there are some logistical challenges, but with the focus being on kids and meeting them and their wants and ultimately preparing them for their post-high school endeavors, we continue to do that. Another example of starting next year, the personal finance requirement is going to come in. That's at the state level. Those standards for that class are incorporated into our economics class. So students are going to be able to double dip. They're going to be able to take econ and get a half a credit of econ and a half a credit of personal finance. And according to the MDE, this is fine. We aren't the only school doing this, but that is going to open up an hour for students. Same thing with geometry enrichment. Instead of having geometry support for a second time, we're going to switch to a model that Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 already exist in, and that should clear up another hour for students to either take another academic class or to take an elective. So those are two opportunities we're implementing next year to free up student schedules, right? Because 6 hours for 4 years, your opportunities are limited, especially with so many graduation requirements automatically, you know, filling in their schedules. And then students can PC personal curriculum opportunities to take higher level academic courses. This is something that's ever evolving at the state level. and something that continues to expand for us. Again, if we don't offer a specific program that meets a student need, how can we develop a personal learning curriculum for that student to meet his or her need for an hour for a class? So something that has been evolving the last couple of years, something that's been front and center on our radar, and something that next year when we look at where the numbers are, what students are taking, you know, it continues to become a more and more positive thing for our students, because it's not what do we tell you you have to take. It's, yes, you have to take these classes per the MMC, but how do you want to take them? Where do you want to get those credits?
So, I know you even recapped it, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Those are 97 different students signed up for dual enrollment, not like 97 classes.
Correct. We have 97 students. It's like 280 classes.
Yeah, that is a lot of outside, normal.
We've gone from 40 to 60 to 80 to 97 next year.
Early colleges, or middle college, I can't remember, one of the two. It's coming back in a year.
Early college.
Early college in a year, so that's gonna open up another option for students. But I think we've talked about this before too, as a governance team, right? The old school, I go to high school, I sit in the class for 6 hours a day, like, that's kind of going away. I mean, again, whether we like it or not, it's changing like AI, so.
Well, and I would have predicted the talent center would be going away, but instead, it's the opposite.
But I think what's
I mean,
what's
you know, like
fantastic
that
is that mindset of college readiness is great, but realistically, not all of our students are going to choose to go to college post-high school. And this exposes, the Wilson Talent Center exposes students to a lot of opportunities in the trades, for example, where they can make a lot of money, right? Electrical, welding, auto repair, that some students might not even know exists. But once they go and they do their tour and they get into these programs, they get really excited about them. And there are certain programs out there where kids actually come out with certificates, right, to enter the workforce at a low level, but it's their foot in the door. So again, we want all of our students to be college ready if they so choose to follow that path, but giving those students who choose not to go to college other opportunities and making them aware, instead of, here's your diploma, get out of high school, see you later, making them aware of what their post-high school opportunities is going to be is phenomenal, and that's reflective in the Talent Center numbers.
Yeah, I think that tour is really beneficial for students to show them the opportunities that are out there. And I know you're gonna touch on AP stuff in just a second, but with the 97 students that are signed up for dual enrollment, have we polled students that would be taking AP courses and they've now switched to more dual enrollment? Have the numbers for AP courses gone down as dual enrollment have gone up?
Yes. So we haven't surveyed the students, but when you just look at the enrollment numbers, the data shows us that. And we can guess for a variety of reasons, right? These are real college classes, so credit is being earned and going on to college transcripts. You are earning 3 credits a semester or 4, and you can take that 2 semesters. So now you're earning 6 or 8 credits in that same 9 or 10 month block that it's going to take to earn 3 or 4 credits through AP. Your grade is earned over the course of a semester, not do I earn college credit in a 1 3-hour test that I might struggle on. The district pays for these credits, so it doesn't cost families or students anything. They currently have to pay to take their AP test. So, you know, they're saving $100 there. So when you look at, you can earn twice the credit, they're on real college transcripts. The course offerings are just vast, right? Because you can look at the entire LCC curriculum guide, where when you look at our AP offerings, we have quite a few for a high school, but it's not comparable to a community college, what they offer, you know, and that doesn't include a few of the kids who take courses at Michigan State. So have we surveyed the students? No, but the data tells us it's shifting in that direction, and it just kind of seems to be common sense what the view and lens is by the students and our families to what some of the benefits are. The big one's probably being double the credit, is my guess.
Not to sidetrack the conversation, but from a public policy standpoint and the way the state's funding system works, there's an argument that continues to be made that the legislature needs to recognize this and provide adequate funding to support students who are attending college courses at high school, understanding that those courses cost more. So the district is paying more money to support kids going to those courses, which is the right answer, but the state should also fund high schools appropriately to take that into account. This is high school is very expensive, and that's the reason most charter schools and private schools don't have high school, right? They might go K-5, they might go K-8, but they stop there because they know high school is expensive. So trying to get the legislator to recognize that this is the new reality and provide the appropriate funding so that the same amount of money coming into the high school then goes back out to pay for that college level credit or credits, and that the high school is not running at a deficit, so to speak, to cover those more expensive courses. I also want to quickly just make a caveat on Wilson Town Center. It's a misnomer too that kids going to Wilson Town Center aren't going on to college. Many of them do go on to get four-year degrees, and when you look at some of the programming that's offered, things like ag science or law enforcement or aviation or cybersecurity, I mean, you know, so there are many, many kids in Wilson Town Center going on to get two-year, four-year degrees or even further on, and it just speaks to the wide variety of programming that's available and a lot of stuff I wish I had back in the day in high school, so it's a great resource.
I do just want to say that we recognize how phenomenal our teachers are, and we would much rather have our students sitting in front of our teachers learning than in front of a screen, dual enrollment. That's where the partnership with Ferris has come into play. We had just under 60 kids take those 2 Ferris classes with Mr. Herrick this year. So they're earning, technically that's an hour of a in-person Ferris class, right? It's like they're at the high school, but it's not a high school class. It's Mr. Herrick's adjunct faculty teaching a Ferris class. It gets our kids back in front of our staff, in-person learning, right? Not virtual learning. The hang-up is there are some pretty strict national requirements to teach a college level course. Any level, right? Community college, 4-year, university. So Mr. Herrick right now is our only staff member who has those credentials. So we are talking with staff, and especially some of our younger staff, because it does revolve around a master's degree, consider getting their master's in their content area as they progress through their career, again, to draw some of these kids back into our seats where we think they're going to get the best education.
All right, highlights about AP stuff.
AP, this is going to be quick. This is going to be easy. I know there was some question about how many students are taking AP classes. Out of those students, how many are taking the AP exam? And if you're not taking the AP exam, why are you not doing so? So we had 79 responses from students this year. This survey was given about 6 weeks ago in April. It was regarding 79 students taking 233 AP exams, which they finished up just this past Friday. So the majority of our students are taking one. You know, about 80% of them are taking 1 or 2, and then you get 3 or more. Are you planning to take the AP exams in May? 79 responses. 71 said yes, 2 said for some, and 6 said for none of my classes. So 89.9, 90% of our students in APs are planning to take all of their APs, or did take all of their AP exams over the last couple of weeks. So we wanted to ask those 2 students and those 6 students, why are you not taking the test? So for the 2 students, one person said, I'm interested in challenging myself in the subject rather than taking college credit. One said, I took it to boost my GPA, and one said, I don't feel prepared for my AP exams. When you look at the 6 who aren't taking any, but remember the majority of the students are only taking 1 class, the most response came with, I'm interested in challenging myself in the subject rather than taking for college credit. The second highest, 5 students, I took the AP class to boost my GPA. That wasn't, I wonder how many students are taking our APs to boost their GPA. So when you look at the 5 and the 1 from the previous slide, out of 79 students, only 6 reported taking it to boost their GPA. 2 said, I don't feel prepared for the AP exam, so 2 plus the 1 from the previous slide. So we had 3 students out of 79 who said they didn't feel prepared, and 1 student said the exam is too expensive. But our teachers do let it be known that just like anything else that has an expense, if students can't afford that, to talk with staff individually, and they'll be helped in that regard. So I don't know who that 1 student is, but there was 1 who felt that way. So I know that's what the board was looking for. I hope that has answered your questions, how many are taking it, and if they're not, why aren't they taking it? But the data shows the overwhelming number of students are, and the ones who aren't, it's just because they're interested in the subject area. Are there any questions about the AP? Did that answer your questions, your I wonders? Okay. Lastly, this is just a heads up of what our core departments are working on. I have to say our departments the last couple of years have done a phenomenal job at the department level working on PD as it aligns with the school improvement plan. They have monthly meetings. We have breakout sessions during our district-wide PD days, and they really are engaged and focused on their work, and I have to publicly give them a lot of credit for that. So continuing that work, there's always going to be a continued focus on active student engagement in the classroom. That's been happening since I got here 6 years ago. It's going to continue to happen. A big one, I've shared with the staff where we are going to start our grading work in the fall. So when you see course scope and sequence to confirm alignment, when you see the summative assessments are standards focused, both of those have to do with our grading, because in order for us to develop that grading policy about summative assessments and weights, that work is mostly done, but we're just going to go back and confirm that that work is done. And then lastly, as we continue to look at the customization, and I kind of mentioned getting kids back into our seats, the concurrent enrollment is kind of dependent on staff certification or qualification, but the AP course is looking at what our kids taking, and are there large number of students taking courses that perhaps we can, provide ourselves. Where it gets challenging is we have 1 here and 1 here and 2 here and 1 here, and that's tough, but continue to keep an eye on numbers and see if are there 15 or 17 kids taking a class, and it would be worth us considering AP courses there. So continue to look at that customization and individual offerings.
That was a lot.
Any questions?
I just want to circle back to the AP feedback real quick.
Yeah.
For that 1 student that said that the test was too expensive.
Yes.
I would like students to know that there should not be any financial barriers around this, and if there are, then I would like us to look into how we can alleviate that. Because
Absolutely.
that there shouldn't, in my opinion, there shouldn't be any financial barriers for students to show their knowledge and be successful. Is there anything else? Any other questions for Dr. Delt?
All right,
See you
thanks
then.
everyone.
Thank
I'll
you.
see you all in a couple of weeks.
Yes, thank you so much.
Do you have any handbook stuff you want to?
Oh, I'm
Oh.
sorry,
Yeah.
yeah, handbook stuff.
Sorry.
Let me open my folder back up.
Sorry.
He was trying to
Yes,
get out.
David,
All right.
a little bit more.
This really should be fast. The first 2 are simply copies. This is officially what the summative retake policy is, and then the zeros policy regarding the practice/formative work and the summative assessment. So it's what was on those other 2 slides. I had to pare it down a tiny bit to make it fit onto a PowerPoint slide, but this is putting the policy in the handbook so it's clear for students. So when teachers reference it, it's there. Any questions about those 2 policies? The graduation requirements, this was just something that needed to be updated with current course requirements. Names of classes had changed. So there's no new information here, except for that state requirement that starting with our incoming freshmen, they are required to have 1/2 credit of personal finance.
Well, and the piece here about world language, and the one question I had on that, and this was something Adam and I learned more about when we went to the conference for MASB, but the prior equivalent learning experience, this doesn't specifically explain to a family or a child how do they get that assessment for that, because the state requires that an assessment be provided if a student shows that they have that prior learning. So where do they get that information?
We've also been told, so when they meet with counselors, every student has individual meetings every single year with a counselor. So as they're talking about, you know, their individual course track and plan of study, it's come out, like I took this class, I took that class, right? Or I did this as a student through MSU. That's where we've been made aware of those situations. We have had a few opportunities where we've granted credit for out-of-school experiences. We had one a couple of years ago, and I don't remember what the language was, but this student had taken multiple years of this through a program at MSU. It wasn't an official class. It was like a club or group taught by a professor, like in the evenings. So that professor wrote us a letter on formal letterhead, basically certifying that this student met the standards required for credit for this class, and we granted it. So in that case, we didn't even give the assessment. The adult, the college professor who'd been teaching or in charge of the club, advising the club, we took her at her word.
So how does, I guess one of the questions I have there then is, you have a family that moves to our community, they're a bilingual family, student speaks only Spanish at home. Based on the state requirements, that student should be able to be tested.
Correct.
To test out of this. How does the family learn about that, to know that that child is eligible for it, and that child doesn't have to go and take 2 years of Spanish that they made, and instead they could take something else?
We would have that conversation with an ESL family,
Okay, thank you.
especially as this has come more and more to light. So it's no guarantee that student's going to test out, though, because again, when you look at the standards, they might be able to fluently speak a language, but when you look at the reading and writing requirements, you know, that's where our Spanish teachers
Right.
probably would have multiple forms of assessment, conversation, written, you know, that sort of thing. So yes, with ESL students, we would definitely have those conversations.
Thank you.
Anything else on graduation requirements? Page 19 was just clarifying language for the certificate of completion. Page 24 was having to do with Michigan virtual and online learning. There was nothing added, it was just language was struck based on a recommendation by the district's legal counsel and a meeting that Dr. Spina and myself and a few others sat in on. Basically, we're required to offer online learning and we cannot limit the courses students request to take. The personal curriculum process, as Dr. Lewis mentioned, reflects the updated board policy there for PCing out, how to go about making that request, any other considerations. So that's all, page 3 and 4 in my document is all about personal curriculum. On page 5, page 38 in the handbook, AI, that's the same policy that Mrs. LaFleur had in her handbook. Page 45, the self-transportation guidelines, this reflects updated board policy. Page 50 is to incorporate AI language into academic integrity code of conduct violations. Page 52 reflects the board's request for an updated cell phone policy. This is the exact same policy that Mrs. LaFleur presented. The offenses are the same.
I have a question. in
Yep.
reference to that. So how is this policy going over with the I know the middle school has pretty much had this policy almost in place. This would be new for us. So how is this gonna be, you know, one of the concerns that we had was that every teacher maintained the policy, and we didn't have some teachers that was like, you know, I'm not so interested in doing this, and so then you might have where one teacher might allow, one teacher not. It's basically discipline. How is that conversation with the teachers going over and their expectation to follow the policy?
The overwhelming majority of teachers, when we've talked about the cell phone policy for a year or two, they've been wanting a policy. I don't think enforcing the policy is going to be an issue, like maybe sometimes other policies can be teacher by teacher. I think their overwhelming concern is how much time is going to be spent policing this in the classroom, and how much time is this going to detract from instructional time because students just have their cell phones out, or who's walking into the bathroom to make sure that the student's not in there during class time but says, I need to go to the bathroom. I think there's teacher concern that this doesn't necessarily eliminate some of the meetups that happen, right? Kids under the desk text, and 2 or 3 kids all of a sudden meet up in the bathroom. There's a lot of them and a few of us, and a lot of space, right? There's a lot of freedom in high school. So I think the policing of it, and actually enforcing it is the primary concern, right? Like, what investment is that going to take from the staff, and are we really going to, is there going to be a reward for that time investment there?
Okay, thank you.
So we'll
I think
see.
we'll find out, because
Yeah.
the board has requested survey data, next late fall, early winter. So we'll get more information on how it's going.
Thank you.
Page 5 was just incorporating II language into the technology misuse code of conduct violation. The violent comments and content was a code of conduct addition. We really didn't have something that hit like levels 2 and 3, right? We had kind of offensive language where like somebody might swear at somebody else, but there was nothing really like, if I do something, right, like if I just draw a picture and show you, or if I make a gesture, or if I make a comment, oh, just go kill yourself, right? It was either kind of really light, and this seemed more egregious than that, or it was all the way to the extreme of very, very significant offense, right, that was going to lead to like level 4 and level 5 discipline consequences. So we just felt like we needed something more in the middle. We could always go with disruptive behavior, right? This just gives us something a little bit more specific when that behavior is a little bit more specific. So that was the rationale behind that added code of conduct violation. The last one, page 73, again, the board policy, it sounds like 2B that Dr. Spina already mentioned.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, everybody.
All right, Mr. Paulson, you are up next for the athletic.
I'm supposed to have another person, but we don't want to have hours to waste. Oh. Mr. Supanowski was supposed to be here, but his daughter has a soccer game, and if he stayed here, I'd be very upset to miss that. So we sent him on his way, and I'll just kind of handle it. We worked on it together a little bit. A lot of it affects the middle school for the main part of it, but it does bleed into the same thing. So I have no problem with taking that part over for him. Looking at our changes, for the high school only section, it was just a lot of cleanup. There was a couple links that were linked to the MHSA website. They've revamped their website and have not migrated everything over. Some of those links also could have been to stuff that they've taken down. Regardless, they didn't go to anything, so they're just removed. And I think that's mostly the 3 that I have that just relate to high school. So unless there's a question on those kind of 3 pages where you just saw that, we just basically took out the links. The main one that both Mr. Supinaski and I were addressing speaks to the team membership policy. If you could scroll up, please, just so I can see where sportsmanship is
I
going.
think it's the last page.
Yep.
It's like 160.
Oh, there you
Excellent.
go.
Actually scroll up to the, just up to the 162 in here. Yes, right there, thank you. For, I guess, long before me, and I don't know exactly when, nor did I get to the history of it, but there's been a philosophy of what's basically been called no cut at the middle school level. Don't know how it started, don't know when it acted, and actually for the purposes, it wasn't really relevant to the times now when we started talking about it, why or when. We got into it more of what is the landscape of sports now and what is everybody else doing in our current league. As of right now, we're the last school to still have that policy or that philosophy. As reading in our policy for squad selection, there was a section that stated there was the squad reduction policy, which I believe went into the middle school part, though only there was just squad reduction policy and didn't have anything to it. Don't know what that was, where that happened, could have been an oversight whenever it was changed before me, but regardless, we tried to change some language to make it more applicable to the times. The humanitarian side of me, the idea of limiting team membership in middle school, it's very, you feel for one side of the kids, but you also understand what's better for the whole. And I deal with it as we aren't, though we're taking away what would may be an opportunity, there's also plenty of opportunities that are provided in the sports that are traditionally more of the sports that cut in the high school level, and for middle school purposes, that would be basketball and volleyball. Those are the two sports that come together that would cut at the high school level that are coincide with middle school. Again, we are the last school in our middle school league to do this. Hazlitt will be enacting it. I don't know if they did not do it last year, but it's already in theirs to do it next year. So I guess we're at the same timeline of them. The idea behind it is, again, the amount of kids that we sometimes have, the coaching that we're able to provide as we struggle to find an A and B coach, to have that extra supervision for maybe an extra team, or having one person who subjectively may be qualified, watching 25 kids, 20 kids, 15, to get kids meaningful playing time in a 32-minute game when there's 15, 16. It's just becomes very difficult, very cumbersome, very challenging for families, emotionally and mentally, but also the people that we expect to supervise and teach. There's just a lot of things that go with it that people may not think besides, oh, just throw them out there, because at that point it becomes recreational. And unfortunately, in today's world, well, fortunately and unfortunately, we're beyond recreational at the middle school level. Opportunities for sports start, in some sports it starts, I believe, as soon as they reach old enough to walk. Tackle football, whatever it is, I mean, it's just as soon as it can happen, let's get it out there, and if we can make money off of it, go ahead and do it. I mean, travel sports and everything else. So people do have opportunities, and middle school sports are no longer that avenue to try something. It's very rare at the time that somebody hasn't tried something beyond high school or at the middle school level if they haven't already wanted to. So again, what we're trying to do is become a little more contemporary, align with our middle school, our middle school league, and again, service something that if when we were honest with ourselves, thought it probably should have been done a while ago, but now, essentially being the only school, it just kind of forced the hand of, we need to look at limiting in those sports, and specifically it would be volleyball and basketball, and creating it's just to better serve everybody, but also understanding there still is opportunity for those kids.
Any questions?
No?
Okay.
Thank you.
Easy enough.
All right,
Easy
thank
enough.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Superintendent's report, Adam.
I just had some upcoming events. 29th of May, which is next week, the retiree open house at the high school commons. The 2nd of June, as everyone knows, is commencement. 3rd June board meeting will be the final budget amendment for this year and next year's projected budget, as well as the Kid Corner Little Hornets handbook and education updates. The 17th of June will be our annual Mass Law reporting and updates on summer projects. And just a reminder to the board that we have scheduled the 15th of July as our July special meeting.
All right, any questions for Adam? Okay, board committee reports. ISOA, we met May 1st, and some of what we discussed, Jason Melma, the ISD superintendent, was our speaker, and he discussed the budget that we talked about last board meeting. So this just gives a recap. He talked, some members had questions about ESSER funds, and I think that there was a misunderstanding that ESSER 3 funds were only given to school districts. They were not given to the ISD. So he kind of gave a background as to why that is and what that is. Talked about the special education funding balance, the whole budget, in essence, the presentation that he would give to districts on why it's important, and he gave that to us. And then he gave us an update on the superintendent's roundtable, which they had the school safety roundtable that was held on May 9th at Holt High School. If you have questions about that, I would direct you specifically to Adam on that. And then we went into district updates. This was our last meeting for the school year. And so if you have, as a board, if we have any ideas for speakers or topics that you would like ISOA to look into or to discuss, you can contact me, and I will be sure to pass those comments and feedback on. Any questions? Okay, board housing committee report. Julie.
We had a meeting on May 9th. We had Tanya Joy from MISHTA who attended, and Cindy Kozlowski from the Home Builders Association of Lansing. Had a really good conversation about programs that MISHTA offers. Cindy did a presentation in reference to a survey that she did with her builder members, and some of the roadblocks or thoughts that they thought were entry-level issues that they had working with some of our tax authorities on building new construction subdivisions. So they're going to continue to circle back with Cindy and her builders to kind of see if they can, I guess, debunk some myths maybe that have been floating around over the past decade in reference to building in our school districts. So we did set up another meeting, or we're going to be setting up another meeting in August. HBA stated that they wanted to come and still attend, and the same thing with Tanya Joy from MISHTA, who happens to live in our area. So overall, I think it was a really good meeting, and we made a lot of grounds with continuing to propose to that we are interested in still making sure that we have new construction. It's still like a 5 to 10 year plan, 15-year plan if we even look. But I think MISHTA gave them a lot of great information about ways that in grants that we have through the My Neighborhood program to reduce this amount of funds for permits, well and sewer hookup, anything in which a builder may attempt to maybe work with, say, Williamston Township on a collaborative effort, maybe putting together a subdivision to reduce their funding to help out Williamston Township with their funding. So some great programs there, so we'll continue to fight and continue to spread the message with them.
Have we heard anything more from any of the other townships that are not represented in the municipality representation?
I don't believe so. Have we, Adam?
No, we've had, I think there's just two that have not attended either meeting.
Mhm.
Meridian Township isn't really
Yeah.
gonna, so I don't really count them. So I guess really just one that hasn't come to either. So it's been a pretty good turnout, I think, so far.
It's been great turnout, and actually Deb provided another gentleman that lives in our area that I think is going to be really impactful, and we have invited him to the August meeting, and he's accepted. So I think we have some good folks that are interested long-term in helping us develop that strategy. So I think we'll see some fruits of the labor over the next year or two.
I think the most exciting thing was you could feel the positivity in both of our meetings. So it feels like it's redirecting everybody to start thinking of what we can do to attract new housing here.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
I was blown away by that meeting. Like, I'm not any kind of expert in the area of housing. But finding out that builders are only making like 10 grand off of a house, just, I think we continue to break down these misperceptions on both ends, like from every side. So I think these meetings are extremely beneficial.
All right, we will look forward to the next meeting sometime in August then. All right, we have one discussion item, and that is the letter from Executive Director Don Truba from MASB. This is something that we need to have a discussion on every year if we want to continue our MASB membership.
I've taken advantage of the membership every year. I find that I learn a ton from them, and they give a ton back to us if you're willing to take advantage of them, both free and paid opportunities. But they are definitely at the forefront in our state with what is happening, and I think they provide a ton to our district for the amount that we pay.
And a free attorney.
I was just thinking
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
There's a lot,
Yeah.
Plus
And
we do require our new board members to go through
The
the
101
the 101 course
Yep.
anyways, as a part of our policy.
Yeah, and just the update, I'm just thinking of the weekly updates, but that's
Yeah.
just one little thing that is a benefit to us that I find extremely helpful. So I would be in favor of continuing this, but this is only a discussion item. This will be up for action. Is there any other discussion on this? Okay, any objection to moving this to our next meeting?
No.
All right, this will be moved for action at our next meeting on June 3rd?
Yes.
3rd, thank you. All right. Moving on to action items, can I get a motion for approval of the regular board meeting held on May 6th?
Make a motion that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular meeting on May 6, 2024 as presented.
Second?
Motion by Chris, second by Amanda. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? All right, we do have one roll call item, and can I get a motion for approval of resolution for support of the Hingham ISD 2024-25 budget?
Make a motion whereas, number 1, section 624 of the revised school code as amended requires the intermediate school board to submit its proposed budget not later than May 1 of each year to the board of each constituent district for review, and number 2, not later than June 1 of each year, the board of each constituent district shall review the proposed intermediate school district budget, shall adopt a board resolution expressing its support or disapproval of the proposed intermediate school district budget, and shall submit to the intermediate school board any specific objections and proposed changes the constituent district board has to the budget. Now therefore, be it resolved that 1, the Board of Education has received and reviewed the proposed intermediate school district budget in accordance with Section 624 of the revised school code as amended, and by the adoption of this resolution expresses its support for the proposed intermediate school district budget. Number 2, the Secretary of the Board of Education or her designee shall forward a copy of this resolution to the intermediate school board or its superintendent no later than June 1 of 2024. And number 3, all resolutions insofar as they conflict with this resolution be and the same are hereby rescinded.
I have a second.
Second?
Motion by Deb, second by Chris. Is there any discussion? All right, Amanda, please take us through roll call.
Amanda, yes. Chris?
Yes?
Deborah?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
And Sarah?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, moving on to separate action items. Can I get a motion to approve the 2024-25 Discovery Elementary Handbook?
I move that the Williamston Board of Education approve the 2024-25 Discovery Elementary School Handbook as presented.
I second it.
I heard Chris. Motion by Julie, second by Chris. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion to approve the 2024-25 Explorer Elementary Handbook?
Make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education approve the 2024-2025 Explorer Elementary Student Handbook as presented.
I second it.
Motion by Chris, second by Deb. Any discussion? I just want to say, we talked about this before, but thank you so much for both Explorer and Discovery for making it super laid out, really easy, made things go really smoothly. All right. I have a motion by Chris, second by Deb. All those in favor? Opposed? All right, motion carries. Can I get a motion to approve leave requests?
Make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education approve the leave request for Megan Carr as presented.
I have a second.
Second?
Motion by Deb, second by Chris. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? All right, can I get a motion to approve the extended leave request?
Make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education approve the extended leave request for Vijay Lakshmi Sadhish Kumar as presented.
Second.
Motion by Chris, second by Deb. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion for approval of the asphalt replacement?
I move that the Williamston Board of Education award a contract to One Way Asphalt to replace parking lot asphalt as detailed in the project description. The costs will not exceed $190,000 with monies coming from the district sinking fund.
Second?
Motion by Julie, second by Chris. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. Review of board goals, and we do have one correspondence of retirement from Robin Monette, who has been just a staple of this district for decades and a constant in our bus garage. She was also a parapro, so she's just been within our district for so many years, and she will be truly, truly missed, and wish her all the best. Did you want to say anything?
No, I second that and hope she considers coming back and driving
I know.
occasionally, so
We do
now
need
that that's legal.
some subs, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
well, we wish her all the best. All right, this brings the second opportunity for citizen comments. Is there any citizens that would like to address the board? You'll have 3 minutes to step to the podium, and you can address the board on any topic. Okay, seeing none, do we have any board member reports or requests? I just want to say that I heard the ice cream social went really, really well. I was there for a little bit towards the end, and it was still a lot of people hung around till the very, very end. So thank you to all those that volunteered sounds like it was a huge success. And I just want to say that I've heard feedback of the 2 different locations were so, the flow of traffic was just so much better having it in both gyms. So, BTSA, thank you so much for putting that on. Also, we did get an email if you were going to attend the Young Fives event. It got moved because of the chance of rain for tomorrow to Thursday. So if you're able to attend that, that will be in the gardens off of the 4th and 5th grade circle.
I just want to mention that STEM showcase was, as usual, extraordinary. This one kid built, it's like a roller coaster for marbles, and everybody was amazed by it.
I put the video on YouTube. I haven't got the story online
Yeah.
yet, though, so
I
I didn't
took a
mention it.
video of
But
it, too. That
the
was-
video of the marble race is on our YouTube page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, this Thursday, 7 o'clock, the
Yes.
middle school and high school band jazz bands will be in the Shell at McCormick Park, so I hope everybody can come.
Yeah.
Free
What
time's
time
a
is that?
7 to
7
9.
o'clock, okay.
Well, they might not make it till 9, but 7 o'clock they start. Usually they don't go as long as a regular concert program, but they have the opportunity.
All right, well, we do not have another board meeting, and our next board meeting is June 3rd, and that will be the day after graduation. So just as a reminder of graduation that Sunday, if you could be at Wharton Center no later than 1:30, that would be preferable, so that we are not holding anything up.
Is there a special meeting at 6 in July?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Thanks.
All right, no other further board member reports or requests. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Second it.
Motion by Chris, second by Deb. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you all very much. We are adjourned.